Welcome to the very first episode of the new season. Episode 1, baby. Episode 1. And we are turning up the heat in this season because I'm bringing you all the famous culinary secrets out there when it comes to cooking the most delicious food at home. Looking at flavor profiles, techniques, all the tools that you need to cook the most delicious meals. I've been getting a lot of messages on Facebook, Instagram. Tell me how you make that steak. What seasoning are you using? How do you get that perfect medium rare? So today we're starting off the first episode with steak. It's gonna be too nice. I eat steak at least once a week. Why? I cannot even tell you how much I love steak. I can eat steak without any sauce, without any side, as a meal on its own. So steak is my number one go-to when I need to make up a quick meal, especially on a busy day. You come home, quickest and most efficient thing to nail in the kitchen, a good steak. Today I'm going to show you how I make my juicy tender steak, give you the lowdown on the flavor, the technique I use for executing my favorite dish. Let's get into it. But first, in this series, I am going to be taking you onto a prep board where I show you how to develop your own flavor profile, as well as the technique used to prepare your ingredients, your spices. This is as basic as it gets. So let's get to the prep board and show you how we structure this cooking method and how it will guide you to executing delicious steaks at home. So let's get to it. So in order to make that delicious steak, I have come up with a very easy equation that will kind of guide you, and it's quite simple. Execution equals flavor plus technique. I mean, without flavor, your steak is just going to be bland. Without the type of technique that you're going to apply to making a steak, you might overcook it, you might undercook it, and it's not going to taste good. One of the most important things when it comes to steak is nailing the temperature of the steak. Let's look at the flavor first. Basic, salt and pepper. We all need salt and pepper. The steak needs to be seasoned well. That's the foundation of really seasoning a good steak. The type of salt I use is kosher salt or any type of coarse salt. And the reason why I use this is because the granule size of a coarse or a kosher salt is quite large and actually sticks to the steak. You're going to lose around 30% of the salt once it hits the pan. There is a third ingredient that I add to my steak. Szechuan pepper, Chinese pepper from the Szechuan state in China. Nice, fruity, spicy, peppery flavor. So Szechuan pepper, that is the three main spice I use for seasoning my meat. Next up, we have the aromatics. So when you smell a steak, you get that nice fresh thyme, rosemary, and aromatics is what you want on your steak. So rosemary, thyme, and garlic. Very important. And last on the flavor side is butter. Butter just gives it that nice creaminess on that crust. Butter used for basting because we're going to baste our steak as soon as we finish off the steak to make sure we have that nice flavor at the end. That basically makes up your flavor profile, and you will not go wrong when it comes to this. Now that we've done with the flavor profile, let's have a look at technique. Most important to making steak. I mean, you can have all the flavor you want on a steak, but if you do not nail this technique, you're going to be left with an overcooked steak that you're just going to chew and not enjoy. Imagine going to a restaurant and you order one of the best cuts of steak, the ribeye, and it's nicely seasoned, it looks great, it smells nice, and you take your knife and you are battling to cut through those muscle fibers, and then you put it in your mouth, and then you battle to chew on that piece of meat. So very important is nailing that internal temperature of that steak. If you have a thermometer, that is an advantage. Sometimes we don't have this in our kitchen, so I'm going to show you how to actually make a steak using the technique over time so that you can perfect making steak at home. First things first is a cast iron pan. You need one of these babies. I mean, cast iron is one of the most essential items you need when making any type of meat, especially steak. If you want that nice crust on the outside of that steak, you need a cast iron pan. Do not use a non-stick pan when making steak. Non-stick is used for low to medium temperatures. Anything higher can burn the Teflon chemical that is on the surface of the pan and release certain chemicals which you don't want. If you have a stainless steel pan, that is also fine. Just make sure it is not a non-stick pan. I love my cast iron pan, and it gives me the best sear when it comes to any type of meat, whether it's pork, lamb, beef. It's a little bit pricey, but if you look after it, it will last forever. Second thing is using the right type of oil. We're going to be cooking at very high temperatures, so you don't want to use extra virgin olive oil. You want to use something with a high smoking point. So canola oil is the most preferred and most cost effective when it comes to making steak or any type of meat that is cooked at high temperatures. Next thing you want to have is a medium rare steak. Now, most people order medium rare. You get some people that order medium, which is no problem. You eat your steak how you want it, as long as it's not well done. So you just need to know the time it takes to make a medium rare or a medium steak. Medium rare is nothing less than 2 minutes aside, whereas medium steak is around 3 minutes aside. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a medium rare steak. That is the most popular. That is how I love my steak. I love that pinkness in the center. So medium rare, 2 minutes aside, nothing more, nothing less. The other technique is how to baste using fat. We mentioned using butter for flavor. We're going to take that butter and we're going to baste the steak at the end so that we have more flavor. Also gives it a nice caramelization on the outside crust. The next is the resting period. One of the most important and fundamental things that people forget is letting that meat rest. You don't want to cut into the meat as soon as you take it out of the pan. The longer you keep it resting, the more the juices flow to the center of the steak, giving you the nice pink center. I normally would let the steak rest around 5 minutes. I'm cooking 2 minutes aside, so nothing less than 5 to 6 minutes resting period. 5 to 6. Last but not least, on the technique side is cutting your steak. How do you cut that steak? It is against the grain. And the reason you cut against the grain is because you want to tear through the muscle fibers. What I normally do, and I will show you later on, is I cut a piece of the steak and then I just look at the edges. And if you see the muscle fibers or the grain running in a vertical position, then you would know you need to cut against it. And this is so important because this also makes the steak tender, because you are now tearing down that muscle fibers. Now you would have the most tender and juiciest steak you would ever eat in your own home. So that was the flavor and technique that will kind of guide you in making your steak. Without nailing that cook, you will be left with a sad steak. Anyways, let's get into making that juicy steak. So now that you have seen the flavor profile as well as the technique used to cook a delicious steak at home, it's time to now put it to a test. So let's get cooking. So I have this gorgeous piece of sirloin. This is around 300 grams, so quite a nice decent size. First things first, we need to heat up that pan. Turn up the heat, throw in some canola oil, and now we need to season this meat. Kosher salt. You want to put enough to cover that outside, so it's very important to season well. Some pepper. Don't be scared to use that pepper. And now for the Szechuan. So I've already added in some Szechuan. If you don't have a pestle and mortar at home, you can always use a grinder. Grind it onto your steak, that's no problem. I, however, have a pestle and mortar at home, so why not use it? I don't want to be too fine, just nice and coarse size, a little bit grainy. You can pretend you're the Hulk in this time. Now we can drop in that Szechuan pepper. Smells so good when you break down a spice. It just releases this aromatics. It's too nice. If you don't have Szechuan at home, salt and pepper is just good enough. It's always good to dab, get all the spices in there. As you can see, forms a nice layer. That is where you want your crust to be nice and seared. I'm now gonna drop the fat on it. Don't leave any of the spice on that board. Make sure you wipe up all of that spices. Now for the other side, salt, pepper. As you can see, the pan is starting to heat up. You can see that smoke. That is why we use canola oil or anything with a high smoking point. If I had to put in extra virgin olive oil, it will start burning now, which leaves the steak with a bitter taste. Rather stick to vegetable oil or canola oil. More Szechuan. If you see your spices falling onto the board, no problem. Take a little bit of oil, drop it on one side. All the spices should now stick to it. There we go. Lovely. Just have a look at this piece of meat. It is nicely seasoned. This is exactly what you want. You don't want to leave the steak bare. No need to buy any fancy stopwatch. Okay, set it to 2 minutes. There we go. Now we throw in this beautiful piece of meat. You can always add in more. Time is really critical when it comes to a piece of steak. Make sure you keep monitoring your timer and your steak. In the meantime, get your aromatics ready. Garlic, just a small smash. Don't worry about chopping that into fine pieces. You just want aromatics in that pan. Got my thyme, a little bit of rosemary, and we're all good to go. Make sure you get that fat rendered down. You don't want to be eating a piece of steak with raw fat. Very important to keep that within your 2 minutes aside. It's always important to get every side of the steak cooked. So now we turn over the steak for its next 2 minutes. What I'm going to do is now throw in some butter. Just put in that thyme and the garlic. Grab your spoon, just move the garlic around so it doesn't burn. As you can see, the butter is giving it that nice layer. OMG, look at that. That's beautiful right there. Now you want to just baste your steak with that butter. Make sure the steak is nicely covered. This gives it a really good depth of flavor. Seal in all sides. I'm now at 2 minutes, and now I'm going to take this out of the stove. Remember, a cast iron pan retains heat, so the longer you keep it in the pan, it's going to cook. So make sure you take it out. A beautiful piece of sirloin. Okay, and now all that lovely juices in the pan, make sure you drop that in. It just smells so good up in here. Now, the most important part. Yo, there's a lot of smoke in here. Okay, so I had to get rid of that smoke, but the good thing is the steak had a good time to rest, so it should be perfectly medium rare in the center. If you have a thermometer, then by measuring the internal temperature, you should have between 60 to 70 degrees Celsius. But for those that do not, making sure you're cooking the steak 2 minutes aside gives you a perfectly medium rare. Let's have a look what's inside. Get a nice sharp knife. It's always important to cut against the grain. This is because you want to break up the muscle fibers so that you can have a juicy piece of meat while eating. So if you do not know which side the grain runs, then just by cutting on edge, as you can see, this is purely fat. That's a nice piece of fat. So if I had to cut on this side, against the grain. Okay, so as you can see, perfectly medium rare. Oh my god, look at that. Now you don't want to cut it too thin, depending how you're eating your steak, but I mean a good thickness gives you a good chew. Oh my god, that is so good. Holy shit, that's good. And now the best part, this lovely piece of fat that was at the end. It's just this pure fat. Oh. Oh, that piece of fat is just so juicy. It's just bursting with flavor in my mouth, and the Szechuan pepper is just whew. You have to try this at home. Trust me, people. I mean, even if you don't slice it this way and just serve your steak with a nice side of veggies, cauliflower puree, cauliflower mash, sweet potato, it's gonna be too nice. But I mean, today's video is all about steak, showing you the flavor and the technique used to make the most tender, juicy steak. So why don't we plate this? The missus is probably very hungry, so I mean, she loves steak. Let's now get this on the plate for her. Start off from one side. Okay, build a small kind of meat stand. That pepper on the top is just marvelous. And there you have it, people. The most tender and juicy steak made at home with a very simple flavor profile and technique. Sure, the steak has a beautiful crust with that sear of pepper and salt, and I mean, just look at that pinkness. Oh man, this is so nice. You can always taste your steak and see if it needs more seasoning. Some salty flakes over the steak gives it just a bit more seasoning. I mean, on its own, it is so nice and juicy, and that is exactly what you want, a juicy steak. Just one of those good steak days. I hope you're gonna try making steak at home. I mean, if you don't get it right the first time, practice and practice, and I'm sure you'll be making the most awesome steaks at home. So that is it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy it, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. In the next video, we're going to make the most creamy scrambled eggs at home, so don't miss out. It's gonna be too nice. Anyways, I'll see you on the next one.